Right, guys, so Clair Obscur Expedition 33. I finished the game a couple days ago on stream. I wanted to sit with my thoughts a bit, figure out what I liked and didn't like, and write a review slash thoughts video as I am doing now because the game was amazing and I have to talk about it. So let's just get right into it. So Expedition 33, it's a new single-player turn-based RPG from the French studio Sandful Interactive. I know a lot of people probably know about it at this point if you're watching the video, but if you don't and you've missed all the articles and all the billions of other videos and reviews on this game was developed by roughly 30 people. It's a AA game. It had some ex-Ubisoft devs working on it, and it's only $50. And another thing, it's on Game Pass. So before I get into everything else, the reason I actually bring up the dev team size and the price of the game is to highlight how letting creativity and passion be the forefront of game development results in beautiful creations like this. The CEO and creative director did say that they wanted to fill the high-fidelity turn-based RPG void that was neglected by AAA game developers, which I think is awesome, since a team of people just really wanted to truly make something that they wanted out of the industry and that they presumably would never get, since most AAA games, if not every AAA game I can really think of on the top of my head, isn't really turn-based. And that feeling of creativity and passion is present as soon as you get into the game's prologue. You can tell that Expedition 33 is made by fans for themselves in all of the best ways. Alright, the combat. One of the major highlights of the game for me, and anyone that I have really talked about the game with. There's been lots of good discussion around it, but also some unnecessary discussion as well, like, should turn-based games come back? Have turn-based games even left? People need to play more games. Final Fantasy needs to go to turn-based, etc., which most of it I feel like isn't really productive or necessary, especially since Expedition 33 is this hybrid turn-based combat system that mixes its greatest aspects of turn-based games and action games. It's not some replacement for one or the other. I think it's different enough to be in its own little hybrid pillar. Because even though I've played almost all mainline FF games, a couple Dragon Quest games, Atlas titles like Persona and Metaphor, and more, there still is that need for classic back-and-forth action. And also, it's hard, man. Parrying and dodging in the game feels exceptional. I genuinely think that when you successfully hit a parry in this game, it is the same exact feeling of dodging a string of attacks in a Souls game or perfect parrying in Sekiro. That satisfaction, if you play those games, you know is second to none, and Expedition 33 delivers on that same feeling after its boss fights or just overworld fights. Now, I'm also not saying that the game is a Souls game or even as difficult as one, since there is a difficulty setting. I personally like the challenge, and the game even gives you plenty of tools at your disposal to overcome these challenges and make some game-breaking builds. People are hitting numbers of like 1 billion and 1 million, which is insane, but they're obviously aware that not everybody wants that challenge, or not everybody's going to be making those builds from looking it up online. And I think that's great. They really just get it. It's for almost everything in the game, really. Even the tutorials and implementation of combat features is like almost perfect. The game has a skill tree for the character abilities, pick those, which is kind of like armor or materia from FF7. You have 3 on at a time, and they all have different stats or buffs or passive abilities for your team. There's, of course, weapons that you can upgrade, along with the character skill points, which is just straight from a Souls game. Even though I just said it's not a Souls game, you have health, defense, luck, speed, and more that contribute to your weapons. And even some weapons, like, have proficiency bonuses. If there's proficiency in speed and attack, you will put more levels into speed and attack, which then it will do more damage than if you didn't put those levels into speed and attack. So it's the same thing as, like, most Souls games. There's also Luminas, which is just more stat buffs and abilities, and that all sounds like a lot, I know, and there's even a couple more things that I'm not going to mention, just in case you don't want spoiled, because the game does slowly add it in, but I never got confused once. Expedition 33 might honestly, like, genuinely be the best example of implementing combat features slowly and also teaching the player slowly with all these new features. Like, tutorials are one of the hardest things to make in games, and I've had a couple classes trying to make directions or tutorials for board games and video games in school, and dude, it is really hard. And I know lots of people don't really pay attention or even mention in reviews if games have good tutorials, unless it's like really, really bad. Like, they're not going to mention if it's a good tutorial because they just play the combat, right? But I thought it was necessary to bring up just because I was blown away at the efficiency and ease of explanation that the game has. Along with that, the difficulty is perfect. I played on normal and I had no dramatic spikes throughout the game other than some end game super bosses, but of course they are meant to be difficult. And honestly, the game did kind of get easy at times, which almost made me bump up the difficulty, but I didn't do that because I just like to speed through the story. But it never took away from the experience. Even, like, I was almost always in the flow state in combat and even purposely fighting enemies just because it was so fun. Which I usually do the exact opposite of that when I do play RPGs, because it just usually feels like most enemies are in the game to bloat out the time for the random encounters, but this game does not do that. This game does not have bloat, and this goes right into the content section and how they somehow make me want to do every single thing the game has to offer in its whole 30 to 40 hour runtime. Every NPC you talk to is intriguing. It feels like it has a purpose, which it does actually have a purpose. And the world is so incredibly cool that you just naturally want to learn more, so you look for anything possible. There is no quest markers, big arrows, or anything like to-do lists that will haunt you throughout the game. And that could be a con for some, especially when you're doing the endgame content and you want to like know what you have left to do or what areas you need to go to, or even what quests you have left. But even for me, I never really felt like that was even necessary, just because the game doesn't ever overload you with much of anything. And by that, I mean there's a very manageable amount of side areas, logs to collect, music records to collect, areas around the map, and like kind of key items that are maybe important for certain quests and certain NPCs. And I never really got that jumbled in my head or even was forgetting what I did and didn't do. And a huge reason for that is there's just no bloat. Like I said, everything feels important. So when you collect an expedition log, it's voiced. The optional relationship dialogues in the camp are all voiced. And also some of the best parts of the game and the conversations you have with the characters around the world, they stick with you. Some areas literally are just one item to pick up. It's kind of like old PS1 RPGs, and the camera is just fixed in the corner, so you basically run in, look how beautiful the zone is, because holy shit, every area in this game is jaw-dropping, and then you leave. These one-off zones are mixed with fully explorable side areas that range from the same amount of corridors that the main mission areas have, or just like two paths that lead to like a puzzle or a super boss. And the game also, like I said, has super bosses and side bosses that contribute to the main plot. So if you want to fight some monsters that are really difficult, that also grow the world and the world building and the story, it has that as well. And everything genuinely ties into each other. But it never made me feel like, oh my gosh, I have to do this stuff, or overwhelmed that there's so much to do, because I was always looking forward of what to do next. And what to do next, I always was looking at the next area. Bro, the visuals are so nice. Easily, and I do not say this lightly, some of the best use of color in a video game like ever. Like, even if you don't like Elden Ring, the art direction in that game is absolutely phenomenal. Xenoblade as well is absolutely stunning, and they're very two drastic games. But Expedition 33 takes those two and mixes it together and delivers on locations that use dark reds, bright greens, blues, purples, yellow, and orange, bright whites contrasting with like other bright colors in like a jaw-dropping way. It's absolutely stunning. Everything looks so cool, and even past that, the fidelity, the frame rate, the character models are also all breathtaking. And this is, of course, still a AA game, which is crazy, but some things that maybe you could tell that it's a AA game is like the mouth flaps. They are noticeably not always perfect with the voicing of the characters, and that kind of took me out of some scenes. It really wasn't that big of a deal, and if you're trying to like focus on it, then you're going to notice it, but that's like really the only con I have with the game. There is some clipping in cutscenes with some items, and then there's some animations that might look a bit funky, but like I will confidently say that you can count on your fingers how little these issues will pop up. And speaking of issues, that brings me to the story. And no, actually, don't really have any issues at all about the story. Other than the main issue is that the devs destroying me and made me feel many emotions in this 40-hour span of a game. The game is broken up in 3 acts and takes some pretty big risks in each. I won't really go into each of them in this video just because I don't want spoilers, but I will talk more about them in another video. However, the story focuses on the cycles of grief, how to deal with these emotions, what's right and wrong about these emotions, and the actions you take resulting from it. And I'm not like someone to like look really deeply into stories and their messages behind it, but that is just from me being a stupid guy who likes to play a game and do combat and like cool story. That is what I got out of it, which is usually a lot more than what I usually pull out of games. And I was kind of happy about that, because I was like, I don't think I'm stupid, but like I'm not always looking for the deeper meaning, but this game really did hit in a lot of ways that usually you have to kind of dig a bit more for, which maybe is good for some and maybe is bad for some, but it's all very compelling throughout. And honestly, it only gets more compelling in each act. There are 2 major story moments that happen in the game, or there's more major story moments, but there's 2 in the game that personally made me worried about the rest of the story and if it was going to be fumbled, because I even mentioned this on stream that what they do at the end of Act 2 usually makes me turn off a game. Like, there's a certain thing they do that if the game didn't turn out in the end what it was, I would have been like, of course that didn't work out, because it usually doesn't. And so when that thing happened, the whole game up until that point was amazing, so I had faith they would pull through with it, and they did. But nonetheless, like, I was still worried, and I was glad I was worried, because I genuinely had struggled to think of things I disliked about the game till that point. So I was overjoyed to be proven wrong once the credits rolled, but that was still something that came up in my head. But that is all I will say. I've maybe said too much at this point, but the game subverts your expectations. It does it again, and then it does it again in the end, and in some mind-blowingly small percentage of a way, pulls it all off very elegantly. And as I said, emotional moments deliver consistently thanks to the movie-like cutscenes, exceptional voice acting, and breathtaking music. And on the topic of the music, it's godly. The soundtrack is incredibly varied, with many different instruments, vocals, and genres used for different moments, characters, songs, and locations. There are very clear influences from other composers, like Keiichi Okabe, who worked on a lot of the Nier music, along with many of the different composers and sounds of the PS2 era Final Fantasies. Looking at you, Final Fantasy X. And speaking of Final Fantasy, Ben Sar, Clive Rosfield himself is in the game, voicing a character named Verso, and he is just one of the many incredibly talented VAs a part of the game. This is bar for bar, like, some of the best voice acting in a game ever, maybe the best ever. Charlie Cox is Gustave, Jennifer English is Mael, Andy Serkis is Renoir, and that's just a few. Like, genuinely, the whole cast all bring these characters flawlessly to life. Lune, CL, and there's more that I won't mention, but everybody should be incredibly proud. The voice director, everyone involved. It feels like a movie, and even in the first hour prologue, and even past the prologue, there are some scenes that, like, give me chills and that I still think of, and it's wild. And so with all that gassing up, glazing, and praising, it brings me to some of the cons. As I already mentioned, the voice flaps have noticeable unalignment throughout the game. There is no fast travel or markers, which can be a pro or con depending on who you ask, and the game is over. That's probably my biggest con, is that I've done everything that the world of Clair Obscur Expedition 33 has to offer, and I kind of wish I had more issues with the game, not because I wanted the game to be bad, but because when I make a review or when I talk about a game, I don't always want to just say it's perfect, because no game is perfect. But this game genuinely does so much amazing stuff, and I think the only way for me to properly think of more issues that I have would be for me to go into the game and actually look for those issues and not just play and enjoy the game. And it's really just mind-blowing what a small team with passion, creativity, and determination can do, man. Like, I know there's plenty of developers out there on AAA games and studios that make games with all of their creativity. They put their all into it, but a game that is $50, it's on Game Pass, has developers that are incredibly grateful and have been inspired by many iconic JRPGs, it just really shows. The game wears its influences proudly on itself, while simultaneously pushing the genre forward in a couple ways. And it's my game of the year, and it's one of the most memorable RPGs that I have ever played. So thanks for watching the video, guys. Drop a like, share it with your friends. I would greatly appreciate it. Subscribe if you'd like, and I hope you have a great day. See you all later.